Hello, and welcome to the Elevated Frequency Podcast. My name is Shannon Morse, and I'm here with the lovely Lisa Kirby, co-founder of the Green Door Life, and our very special guest, Darren Starwynn. Hi, Darren. So much welcome to you. I love how you have the quantum catalyst. For those of you who can't see it, he has his little title under his name, Darren Starwynn. It says Quantum Catalyst. So we're very excited to have you here today.
It's really beautiful to be with the two of you. I feel it already.
As do I. So per usual, we're really excited just about sharing additional practices that we can introduce to different people about how they can elevate their frequency in whatever cycle of life they might be in. And per usual, I like to volley it to Lisa to start off our initial question. So Lisa, what do you got for our initial question today?
Well, I'd love to start with just, tell us more about you, Darren, but very curiously, what is a quantum catalyst? If you want to start there and share what that means and a little bit more about what you do, where you reside, all of that.
Okay, well, thanks for asking those things, Lisa. Yeah, well, I heard the term catalyst first when I was studying chemistry when I was in school. And a catalyst is some kind of substance that triggers transformation in another substance or system, and the catalyst itself is not changed in that process. So that's the scientific meaning of the word catalyst. So anytime one of us is acting as a point of inspiration or transformation for someone else, without a lot of techniques or teachings or intellectual ideas, just by being yourself, that's when you're acting like a catalyst. And so I think most of us do it one way or the other with people. So my particular way, being a quantum catalyst, is that I've discovered that when I'm with people, either individually or in groups, who have the interest or intention in awakening their consciousness and, like lightening up their emotional body and kind of stepping into more of who they really are, I found that they have a lot of rapid, spontaneous shifts when I'm working with them. And it often isn't even that dependent on what techniques I'm using and so on, although those are helpful. It's just something about beingness. And like, it's chemistry. It's a kind of chemistry, I guess. So quantum in this way has a, the word quantum's thrown around a dime a dozen now in so many places. So people wonder, what the heck do they mean by that now? So I just want to be clear what we're talking about with that use of that word in this discussion is that quanta would be some kind of quantity of something, usually like a certain amount of photons of light is the way it originally was used in quantum physics. And so it's something to do with frequency and vibration, because a quantum leap is when something like an electron or a photon jumps to a higher level and there's no time involved. It's instantaneously just at a higher level and nobody can explain why. And so that happens with people. There could be this idea of like very slow, gradual growth and working on yourself, which is part of our experience. But there's also moments like change points where it's like that quantum leap where somebody just goes, and there's suddenly their life is different. And there's not really any logical explanation. And so that's what I'm talking about with the quantum leap. It's something where you actually literally go outside of time to a higher level of who you are, your own self-expression and your own empowerment. Your access to your, what I call your superpowers, which is the parts of you that are divine. Because our human parts are the parts that we've developed through our personality and schooling and training. But the divine parts, it's like, remember in the movie Amadeus, it was about Mozart. He would say, God is singing through me. That's where all this music comes from. That was the expression he used. And the other guy didn't have that as much. So the way that, the divine or the goddess or whatever word you like sings through you without you having to work that hard, that's your superpowers.
I love that. And I love the Amadeus reference. I have very fond memories of watching that movie with my mom. And
yeah,
it's very, very special. I love classical music as well. Like the first feeling and thought that came to my mind as you're discussing that is Jesus, as, to be totally brutally honest, of like the first person I think of as like a quantum catalyst, just being in the presence of someone who is at that level of consciousness and embodying that kind of love I really feel like that was the miracle of when you are yourself and you're vibrating at this place, you can't help but have a ripple effect on, people around you.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, so many people idealize Jesus and Buddha and Kuan Yin and these people because they had that total effect. They could just calmly walk into a place and pass somebody on the street and they are uplifted, or they have these healings, or their leprosy goes away. The thing that's really hard for us to handle is that each of us has that opportunity just as much as Jesus and Buddha did right now, because of the time we're living in on our planet. And it's kind of like the whole thing like the ostrich has their head in the ground. They believe that nobody can see them. That's an old. I think that's what almost all of us are doing. Even those of us who consider ourselves to be conscious or more enlightened or whatever it is, there's a big part of us that is just not seeing what's actually happening on our planet and who we are in relation to things, because our minds tend to be stuck in the past into old identities. And you mentioned that, Shannon, about identities earlier.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's the biggest challenge for people who want to awaken, be conscious, call them light workers or whatever you want, is simply changing your belief from your identity of what you think you are to actually who you actually already are now. That's quite different than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing like that.
It's so good, Darren, because we did this, like I was sharing earlier before we jumped on live, that we did this practice this morning, this guided meditation with our group that was exactly creating that space where that true expression, the authentic expression of ourselves is within us all the time. It's just whether or not we believe that it's there ready for us whenever we want to tap into it, and just continually kind of moving in and going, how can I move and express through that space in any given moment of time? And I want to make sure that we also share exactly kind of the tangible aspects of what you do in reality and how you hold this space, because
Right.
we recently had a retreat with you in the Santa Cruz Mountains, which was so beautiful. And what I think would be very cool to speak into is that we were able to witness, how many people were at the retreat? Maybe 17?
It was 20, including me and my partner.
Okay. So about 20 individuals
Yeah.
who, at least from my perspective, I was able to witness that each individual was allowing, not even stepping into, right? Because it's always there, was allowing their full expression of self without a mask, without shame, without guilt, without anger, without the thing that generally stands in our way and says, I can't be this person because it's too much or too little of something. And it looked very different for each individual.
Yes.
And it was a completely miraculous thing to witness. So maybe I would love to start with how you run these kinds of containers or experiences, and where you step in as this quantum catalyst, and then what that looks like for individuals to work with you in that capacity.
Yeah. Thank you, Shannon. Well, there's several factors that go into that miraculous thing that you referred to, that you and I directly experienced, and really, I mean, so many people since the retreat have contacted me and said that they've had these shifts that are just, their life is literally changed in ways that had not happened in a long time. So I'm seeing the fruits of that in many different ways. Is that I feel like there's certain groups of souls that are able to vibe with each other in a certain way, called a soul group. And we have some maybe somewhat similar shared purpose. So I feel like I draw together certain people, that have certain soul purposes of a certain flavor, like a certain milieu. And usually the kind of people that I draw to me to these events are people who are already in the process of helping others. Like, sort of, I'm like a teacher to the teachers, or a healer to the healers, more than a healer to the public. I did that for 30 years. I'm doing that so much as a doctor, an acupuncturist, and healer. So now I feel like I'm drawing the leaders to me so that they can be empowered to lead on a higher level. And that's the dearest thing to my heart, because I feel like at this point, there's such a great need for empowered, enlightened people that can step in leadership and be very genuine emotionally and very grounded in themselves and not on an ego trip and not following ideologies, but really being an avatar, being their own self. And so I love to help people step into that and give them the kind of training. And there's something also about the group. Like I've noticed that like, let's say if there's two people in a romantic relationship and they're really in love, it almost feels like a third thing is created, even if they don't have a physical baby. Like there's almost like another entity that's us, you can call it us or we. And I feel like that happened so strongly at that retreat. And with the master course that we were doing online before that, that this group consciousness formed. And I know that might scare some people, group consciousness, like you think of like a mob, destroying the downtown. But this is a very good kind of group consciousness. It's where each person is staying in their empowerment and groundedness, but yet there's this field that lifts everybody up, and it makes the acceleration of this like awakening and transmutation process much, much faster. And that's what happened there. So the way I work, what my role is as a quantum catalyst, is we're doing a lot of hard work to organize it and bring everyone together. And we all know that part's there. But once it's there, I feel like I'm aware of my multidimensional self. Like when I'm leading that event, I'm aware of Darren, and I'm also feel like there's other, maybe Christ consciousness and divine feminine, and there's these different energies that I'm aware of that are there, and whatever is needed just seems to come through. And then, there's certain specific activities that we do. Like I found that there's certain like game plans for these retreats that works really well. Like a lot of movement, a lot of dance, hiking, like things that get people in their body, a lot of laughter, a lot of fun. And then times where we go really, really deep and creating a safe group field where each individual can feel safe enough to like open parts of themselves that they've kept hidden away and have been afraid about. So it's kind of weaving these different elements together. I've learned over the years how to keep it really engaging and to make it so that people actually go through these passages that have been very difficult for them in the past.
It's a beautiful container. I've been to 3 of your retreats, so
yeah. Well, I'm honored that you have, Shannon.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm honored to have been there and also to have witnessed your evolution as an instructor and a practitioner and a quantum catalyst, because that's been quite interesting as well. And I think as collective, like I watch Lisa go through her evolution, I kind of get a distorted view of my own evolution sometimes, because we can only see ourselves in such a capacity.
Yeah.
I've definitely watched your evolution, Darren, in that capacity specifically. And what I wanted to reflect back as well is that what I noticed in that space is I feel that there is a certain level of safety and direct access to source or consciousness or the quantum field that someone has to be so present with in order to create that for others to experience as well. And I really experienced you holding this energetic space, and I would witness as different people would come up and sit in your chair, because you invite everyone to interact and everyone to be in that seat. And for some, it'll be quite uncomfortable and confronting, but that's, part of the design, right? To a certain extent, sometimes maybe. But what I noticed is that whenever it was like an alchemy of energy throughout the entire experience. And whenever you were sitting there without even saying anything, sometimes you'll just really hold this presence. And I wanted to reflect back to you, and just for those who are listening, because it's really hard to talk about this and to kind of really give people an expression of what it is to have this sort of experience, especially if you've never had anything like it before. But if individuals are choosing to work with a practitioner to just even try to understand what this feeling could feel like for them, I do really want to impress that I think it requires someone like you to be the example of what it can look and feel like.
I think that's that's true. I mean, having a catalyst or a mentor or someone who has taken a step to hold this, because somebody has to go and kind of get in the space and create it and then invite people in.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem to be that way. So yeah, and I'd like to say a little bit about like, so what are the practical benefits if someone goes through this process? I mean, it sounds like kind of makes them very out there and talking about transformation and awakening and things like that. But what does that actually mean? Well, what happens in people's lives who do this is that they discover a part of themselves or get more in touch with that I call the master healer. And this is an aspect, you can call it the Holy Spirit, you can call it different names, and depending on your belief system. But it's actually an infinite power that creates healing miracles or transformations in others that most people are, not only a little bit in touch, kind of hit or miss, like it pops in here and there, but to have more access to that part on a more reliable, consistent basis is one of the fruits that comes out of this. So whether somebody's a coach or whether they're a healer, or they're a doctor, or they doing other kinds of work with people, or even just for their own personal space that they're holding, or for their family, whatever it is, that when you start embodying more of that master healer and start trusting it more, then really you become a force for greater good in the world, and that tends to reflect as more of success in what you're doing in different business things or practice. But the main thing is this feeling of fulfillment. I've searched throughout my life for this feeling when I was young, like I knew I had this purpose, and feeling so frustrated and so cut off from it and so blocked energetically on so many levels. Like I feel like I had to go through maybe 2 or 3 lifetimes of like clearing and healing and so much stuff in the first 30, 40 years of my life to get to a point where this could start to come through. So I guess what I love to do is make that shorter for other people, and it's possible now because the energies are supported much more than it did 30 or 40 years ago.
I'd love to talk more about that, just kind of what you were saying, Darren, that things are different. I mean, whatever people believe or don't believe, it's hard to look at the state of the world and the state of consciousness right now and where people are at and not feel like, okay, we're in the middle of something massive. I personally believe we will not, I don't think we will recognize society in like 20 years from now. I think it is going to look so different and feel so different on so many different levels. Can you share a little bit more about what you're describing as like the different energies, or just what this state of consciousness or whatever it is to the lay person who may not be like in this conversation 24/7?
So would you rephrase that question a bit, like explain what now?
Yeah, like, so when you say there's different energies right now,
Yeah.
or that we're dealing with, just a different state of the world where we really
Oh, I
can't
see.
afford to stay stuck in our past patterns and trying to do things the way we used to do. So what is it that's different now, or what's coming in?
Okay, there's such a big answer to that question that I'm trying to wrap my think where to start. But I love to keep it simple. Is that I'm going to throw a kind of controversial phrase out, and that is the slave self. And this is an expression I use in my teaching and other people have used. And what it literally refers to is the part of us that has been programmed and manipulated, domesticated by, by so many different influences. I don't need to go into what they are, but some of them we know, some of them we don't even see. We just don't even see. But the purpose of all that is to take like these the beings like us who have such tremendous consciousness and love and presence and light, and make us turn in on ourselves and feel like we're self-sabotaging or running into walls, or dealing with different fears and anxieties and so on. So in other words, that has become the new normal in our world. And it's been that way actually for generations, that things are based on fear and domination on our planet, and constant warfare and some constant injustices and all these things. The difference now is that it's all coming out in the open in a way that wasn't happening before. And the truth that's beyond all that stuff is much more accessible than it was before. And so this is really big, is that one of the things I've seen in So I guess and try to talk to lay people. It's just the simplest way I can put it is that whatever parts of you that feel like they're bogging you down or make you afraid or make you feel like you lose energy or that you're keeping you from fulfilling what you'd really love to do. Just want you to know the veils are parting to the point where you are already in this much higher state, even if you don't see it. And times we're in now, it's just much more accessible. In other words, it doesn't have to be months or years and years of meditation and this and that and the other thing. I mean, meditation's great. I mean, you can literally like pop into this more awareness of the freedom that you already have, of the higher, like a lot of resources you have much more quickly than you probably believe. And there's still so many religions and spiritual paths that kind of keep people somewhat in a box of how it used to be. Like you have to do step A, you have to do step B, you have to do this, and there's a certain like guilt involved or a certain judgment involved. And we don't need that anymore. What we really need is the permission just to say that I am here and that I can open to this new earth that we're already in. Like New Earth is an interesting phrase. I mean, Eckhart Tolle wrote a book called A New Earth, which is wonderful. I highly recommend it. But he's basically saying that there's a more highly evolved Earth that already exists here. It's not some pie in the sky thing like someday after we solve all our problems, we'll have a new Earth. No, it's here, but we have to have the eyes to see it. Like we have to be able to like kind of like, whoa, just look away from our habitual thoughts and just see that, hey, this is already here. And I have to retrain my nervous system to live on this frequency. Does that sound lay enough, or is that still pretty out there?
No, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, because I think one of the biggest things, at least I know for my own self in the last just 5 years, is at least being at a place of just getting out of survival mode. Is kind of like, I feel is kind of that foundational step one. So you can even be open to that, because sometimes I feel like, and that's really the work that Shannon and I do is really through the power of nutrition and movement, just getting a lot of people out of that survival mode state of like, let's fuel the body, let's nourish the body. Oh, then that opens up to like emotional nourishment, and it gives you space to kind of expand there and feel safe enough to go to some of these deeper topics, and then eventually opening up to this spiritual nourishment. But it's almost like just allowing yourself those moments, those pockets of time that you don't need months or years now. It's like I wake up and I watch the sunrise and I'm in tears most mornings. Just like,
beautiful. Yeah.
What a gift to just be here. But I wouldn't be able to access that point without getting out of that kind of survival mode state and fear state that a lot of us, have been or are still in, for a very long time.
And Lisa, one thing about that I just want to say is that it's kind of like everything is intensified right now. So when any of us are focusing on the fear state, it's actually more, it can be so crazy and overwhelming. And one of the reasons for that is because we've become much more empathic as a human race as we're evolving. So we're feeling so much more of the pain body of millions of other people, and then thinking it's you. Like if you wake up feeling kind of funky, it may not even be you. It just you're just sort of like feeling all these other souls that are going through so much. So a big part that's really important is to learn spiritual hygiene. Is like a very important thing that I teach people and work with myself. Is like having practices you do through the day to keep yourself in integrity with your own field, and to kind of cut the cords with other people and beings that you feel obligated to take on their energies, and which can be a big job. There could be a lot to that. So I think it's just like when you're driving and you need the windshield wipers on during a rainstorm. That's what spiritual hygiene is like. It's like little practices and mindfulness you do throughout the day. That's simple little stuff that just kind of keeps you in a clear place. And then you're not carrying anybody else. It's just you and the divine. And then that's when life is beautiful and inspiring. But I got to say, it's challenging time we're in now, because those old things are pulling on us so much, and everything's opening. So it's really good to have the support of a group and mentors who you trust at this point. It's really, really valuable time for that.
Absolutely.
I'm lost without community right now. Oh my.
And I wanted to circle back to something that you were just saying, Darren, about that the new earth is like here for us now. And what that makes me think about, because I think it's interesting, and we were talking about this morning as well with our group. You know, we're in this 10th week of our current group coaching program, and some of our clients are with us for the second time. And we were talking today about cycles that we go through in our lives, and sometimes, you know, when you're in this container with people who are doing, you know, a 12 or 12 week or 6 month program or whatever the time frame is, we're catching these individuals, or the individuals are participating at this very short window of experience for themselves. And inside of that window, there's a certain cycle that they're going through, and a mental, emotional, spiritual experience that they're having that will only be perhaps during that certain period of time. And what I've kind of noticed is that for some of us, we almost have, it feels like multiple layers of cycles that are happening. Like for some of us, we have our life cycle, like our full like karma or dharma that we are working with in this life. And it will be with us and it'll repeat itself. And it doesn't matter necessarily, and this is kind of just hypothetical, bringing this conversation here, it doesn't necessarily matter what we choose to see sometimes, because that dharma has to be worked through to start, as one example. And then there's other ones that are kind of the conditioning or the slave self or the programming, where we've essentially been conditioned consciously or unconsciously to feel, be, or see certain things, like to desire certain things for ourselves, or to have certain expectations of self. Almost like, you know, everyone should want a red car because red cars are in right now, you know, and then you just see red cars everywhere and you're like, well, they have one, I should want that too, right? And so I kind of see this new earth kind of perspective, or what you were causing me to think about, is that we can, if we're so present, and this is really what I appreciate about the work that I've experienced with you in so many different ways. But I feel like if we're really present and be able to tap into that deepest place in us, then we can start to create the expression we want to see in the world, and no longer be influenced by the outside in, but rather be influenced by the inside out. And then we essentially get to be the drop that's helping to create that new earth by being so present with ourselves and listening so deeply. And that's what I feel like your container has allowed for in so many ways. And that's what, when you just said that, like the aspect of the new earth, it made me think of that the new earth exists because we're creating it. And it just depends on what's presence or what space we are creating from, whether it's from that fear or that sense of deep presence and authority. Does that feel resonant?
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the new, we don't think we actually have to create the new earth. We just have to realize it's already here and participate in it, which is maybe a slightly different thing. And there's a part of the mind that wants to keep recreating the old earth because of just habit. Because, you know, this is part of the human, the bug in our ointment is that we tend to be creatures of habit and have this, you know, obsessive patterns of just keep repeating what we've had before that's familiar. So that takes strength. I mean, it takes courage, it takes strength, it takes love, it takes all those things to kind of break out of that mold. And so that's what I like. That's what I want to do for the people that I'm working with and supporting, is help them to break that habit. And so they can see, whoa, I'm already here. I'm already being who I am. And I'm already in this new earth. And look at all these playmates and all these like collaborators and all these people here that I can now do it with. And so that happened at that retreat. And that was a really beautiful thing. It's going to continue.
I think the term new earth, at least how I've seen it as well, is just the vision of people, and it's already happening, of like people wanting a different, societal setup. Like I even just think of the smallest thing. Like I think about kids, my kids in schooling, where, my husband and I knew immediately, we're like, all right, traditional school is not going to be the path for our children. Like, it just doesn't resonate. We want nothing to do with it. And I think, it's looking at some of these structures and these things that we've created over the last like 200 years and being like, does this serve us? Does this fit like who we are as a human species and where we're headed? And in a lot of these situations, it doesn't. I mean, we talk to so many people who feel so isolated and so lonely, even though we have, social media and all these like interconnected technologies, but people want community. And it like, I think of those things when I think of like New Earth. Of course, I have so much Earth astrology signs in me that I'm like, okay, how do we like anchor this and like make it tangible and like functioning in a way for us in our physical bodies, so that like, how do we anchor that New Earth, love and consciousness and energy, and like support it in a way that supports us physically as well. I think people are just done, with a lot of people are done with kind of like, those are the old ways. They're not working anymore. What can we do to support us, collectively?
Yeah, that's very important. And I mean, it just starts with one person at a time. And so it's a great intention to say that, well, here's another day. And how can I share, who I really am and support other people in awakening to the new earth or to their true self? Because it's a good time to be proactive. Like this is not a good, I mean, of course we need to rest and relax. This I feel like there's a call. There's like a part of us called the warrior, spiritual warrior, that needs to make a choice and step up and be brave and commit. And I know that can be scary and it's easy to resist that, but that's what your soul is calling you to, because that's when you're the happiest. I mean, when we go to happiness, I mean, the greatest happiness that I know is when I'm actually fulfilling my purpose and I see other people blossoming and I'm feeling, great and having fun and and I know that I'm part of the solution on the planet. And I appreciate, Shannon, that you've experienced that with me. That's very honoring that you felt that way. But I know you two do that also for so many people. You have a network of people, and so I feel like there's a kind of lead. I want to say something about leadership, like spiritual leadership. Like we've gone through this in our master course. Is that imagine that there's a circle, and that circle is you, and that you're in the center of your own circle, and you're and you're actually just fully committed to being yourself, and excuse me, and not depending on anyone else to validate you or any system to say you're okay, but you just know I am who I am. I honor myself. I believe in myself, and I have these creative abilities, or I have different talents or superpowers. And it takes a certain like courage and love just to start saying, I'm willing to start sharing from this level, not just saying what people want me to hear, want to hear. Because when you do that, when you're in the middle of your own circle and you share your gifts freely and generously, the universe responds so beautifully. Like people just show up who want to support you or be a client of yours. I mean, either way, both things happen when you stand in the middle of your own circle. And so to me, that's called spiritual leadership. And it's different than the old model of leadership where it's top down and hierarchies, where somebody is the leader and someone else is under them and someone's under them. And it just sort of breeds corruption, and it breeds a lot of dysfunction and patriarchal, suppression of the feminine. There's a lot of things that happen in that old model. But in this flower of life leadership model, each person's in the center of their own circle, overlapping with other people who are sovereigns in their own circle. And so I think that's really appropriate right now, to share that perspective and however we can with people, encourage them to do that, to really find themselves and just start sharing it.
Absolutely. Lisa and I are both like, yeah, we've discussed that. At least you and I have discussed that in a number of ways, like in terms of how that looks in reality. And I think even like doing that as practitioners, like if you have a group of practitioners who are coming in and each sharing their full expression and their gift, and then it further helps to activate everyone else's full expression and gifts. And Darren, I just want to really say thank you for bringing vocabulary to that experience, because that's a very different, at least with the upbringing that I saw with like who leaders were. Leaders were like, there's one person.
Right.
There's one person who is dictating, or that who's like the buck stops with that person. But the person is only there because others are giving them the platform.
Yeah.
But if we all share the platform from this state of, real true presence, I just want to really say thank you for giving vocabulary to that being a new type of leadership that we can all embody and integrate as spiritual advocates, leaders, like whatever this game of consciousness, however you want to call it. So I'm really, really grateful that you just gave vocabulary to it in such a way. And I know Lisa and I are definitely on that page with you, where it's like all about the collaborative. And I love the flower of life example, because that gives it, a shape.
And I mean, so many people I know have tremendous gifts and, soul qualities, and are just shy or afraid about really putting it out there for so many different reasons. Or maybe they get bogged down with all the technology it takes to put it out now. There's a lot of technology that you have to do, or, having to sell yourself. There's all these ideas, but if you just really come from your heart, those things all just take care of themselves. Because if you just simply feel, I have this gift, I have this superpower in me, and I'm committed to sharing it generously and abundantly, those things will work out. I mean, you'll find a techno geek who will help you on Fiverr or something to do what you need to do. I mean, there's always a solution for all those things, but it just comes down to like the inner decision. Like, yes, it's like I love to see like fireworks in the sky, like big, like writing yes, like boom. Yes, I am here. Yes, I am going to, show up, and yes, I'm going to share my purpose. And when that happens, the world literally changes, because I feel like there is, I don't want to go into discussion of what the dark side is, but there is a dark side influence that's been very intense on our planet for a long time, that keeps pulling us into warfare and conflict and divide and conquer and, subjugation and all that, power over instead of, mutual empowerment. And that dark side only can control us when we are controlled, when we're being controlled, when we're staying in fear slave self. Then that's like, then there's a handle there to be jerked around. But when you say I'm a sovereign and I'm actually sharing my gift, you step out of that system. You're just not in that system anymore. And there was a great phrase from the 1960s when I was young, bumper stickers. They said, what if they gave a war and nobody came? Isn't that a great bumper sticker? What if they gave a war and nobody came? I think there's such wisdom in that, because what if all these manipulating, whatever they are, tried to do their thing, and people just say, hey, we're not interested. I'm too much enjoying, sharing who I am and doing my service and loving and changing the planet and, volunteering and creating successful businesses. I'm too busy doing that to participate in that war.
I love that. I love that. I keep having the thought, I'm like, isn't it so exhausting to not be yourself?
It's a great way to put it, Lisa. It isn't exhausting to not be yourself.
I do. I think I like to reflect back only when I like to reflect back and see like growth. And I think back and I'm like, man, that was exhausting to be me, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And it's so like the liberation of just energy when you can just be yourself and feel so, confident and secure and authentic. It's like, what is more freeing than just being you?
I feel like in this, presidential campaign going on this year in the United States, it's an exercise in consciousness or unconsciousness, depending on how you approach it, that there's very powerful forces trying to divide and conquer. Because it's not even, I don't think it's even that much about the Republican versus the Democrat. I mean, there's some very real differences that I personally have, but I think the bigger thing going on is simply divide and conquer. If we get people distrusting and, this is really a kind of a sad thing, but I talked to my former wife yesterday to wish her, her birthday 2 days ago. And I called her up and she said she has a brother, who's, I guess their family is very, very staunch Trump supporters. And she's, more on the other side. And he would call her for her birthday every year for her entire life. And this year is the first one he didn't call her, just because he was feeling more like judgmental because she was in a different camp. I mean, in other words, that's the kind of thing that is going in the wrong direction. When we just feel more separate and more judgmental. Okay, you have a different opinion, different parties, that's part of a system. But there's something that wants to make us distrust each other and separate from each other more. And so I just feel like whatever this is, it's like, if I'd like to see every human being just a person. And if they have a different idea and they want a different set of, policies, and that's part of a healthy process. But to distrust and hate and fear people because that means you're in the slave self, folks, if you're having those thoughts and feelings, and just realize it and step out of it. Say, no, I'm not going to play.
Oh my gosh, there's so many places we could go with just that.
I know, there's a lot here.
Yeah, there's so much. And I think that, wow. I mean, I so appreciate the conversation and just like the authenticity and the serious, I mean, I want to say serious, but like it's the real talk. I appreciate the real talk in this way. And Darren, what you're expressing and what you're expressing too, Lisa, of like the allowing it all. Isn't it exhausting to hold it in?
Yeah.
Like, isn't it exhausting to pretend like we have to be something other than who we actually are? That whole experience. And what you're sharing, Darren, about the external, we judge others, or when we have that feeling of others, it's really just a reflection of us. And when I first heard that, I almost thought it was like a bumper sticker, like I didn't really understand it. And then I think as my evolution started to unfold, and as some of like my own veils started to get thinner and the masks that I wore started to be like, oh, but that doesn't just show up one area in my life. It actually reflects in a few areas. So where in me am I judging myself?
Yeah.
And so to go, okay, well, if there's judgment that's going there, then where in me is that also occurring? And noticing that it's the seed that goes in before it goes out. And I actually had this experience. I love this because it's so simple and tangible. The last time I had a week by myself in our house, I was hearing my internal dialogue, and it was talking to me about cleaning. And it was saying things like, you're going to dry that dish, right? Why wouldn't you dry that? I mean, it's just sitting, it's one dish. You can dry it, and why aren't you going to do that? Because if you don't do it, it's just going to sit there. And every time you walk by that dish, it still needs to be dried, or you're going to wait an hour and it's going to dry itself. This whole conversation was occurring. And then Rafa got home. And then I realized that dialogue was now being pointed at him, going like, you're going to fold that laundry, right? And like every time I walk by, like it's still there. I mean, does he see it? Is he going to fold it? Like, so it was such a beautiful example of like, oh shoot, it goes in first, and that's my internal dialogue. And then I will be more present to it because I can hear it when I speak it out into others. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective. I don't know if anyone else has that experience.
Well, about internal dialogue, and you were able to see that you're having internal dialogue, which is a good thing, instead of 100% identifying with it.
Right. I was like, wow, who is that talking right now? That person, sometimes I'll actually name the different personalities because I think we have multiple, where, some are like the party grower and the other one is like the self-critic and all of these things.
Yeah.
But kind of as you're sharing, I feel like when we do have these experiences where people have different perspectives, whether it's around government or the way they like to brush their teeth, or whether they want children or not, or whatever it might be, it's like, it's just a different expression of life. And the way we judge it, or the way it lands for us, has more to do with us than it does with the actual thing itself.
That's true. Yes.
It always feels bad. I mean, I don't know anyone who feels good when they're judging, right? And I always think about I like the thought that we are more alike than different. And I call on that one a lot, because I can tend to, in the heat of the moment, I think we all have that tendency, or we can go there of like, oh my God, we're so different and we're so on the opposite sides of the spectrum. And it's like, well, is that true? Like, is it maybe just on one topic? Is that actually true? Like, maybe we're actually more alike in all these other areas, or maybe we fill in the gaps for each other. Maybe we're like puzzle pieces and we actually like work synergistically really well together. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a thought, one more thought for that one. I think one thing that has actually helped me, like in many relationships in general on this, is if I think of us as a unit. So if there's any harm that comes to the other unit, then I also experience it, not from a place of codependency. It's not a codependent, like you have to feel good in order for me to feel good. Like, that's not it.
Yeah.
It's more so like if it extends a different type of awareness and care, because it extends like you and I are operating in the same environment, in the same field. We are connected. And in that sense, how things occur for you, I have a responsibility of how I impact you, because we are connected in that way. So being able to just, move back in and allow that kind of, it's almost like it's a heart coherence.
Yes.
Allowing ourselves to be with the heart coherence that's there. And I remember there was a study that I read, and I always refer back to this. So people have probably heard this before, but it's when we believe that we're doing something with someone else, that our heart-brain coherence starts to sync up. When we feel like we're doing it as a competition or an opposing way, it does not sync. And I thought that was so fascinating. So when we believe we're on the same team, that we actually perform better as a unit. And it's just the belief that will shift it. So I thought that was kind of a beautiful thing.
Absolutely true. Yes. And there's so many levels of like the flower of life, like those interconnected circles, and that great power when we're interconnected and flowing that way. And it's a great pleasure when you experience that.
Absolutely.
I was filming yesterday. We went horseback riding and had this magical spring break day with the kids that we haven't done ever. And at one moment, I'm like sitting on the ground, on the earth, and I'm like filming this anthill. And I'm just watching these ants, and I'm like, this is the most amazing thing I have ever seen in my entire life. I'm like, look at all these ants. There are thousands and thousands, maybe more ants, and they all have their little roles, and no one's bumping into each other, and they're all doing their things, and they're helping each other. And it was almost this moment, I'm like, it's the opposite of survival of the fittest. It's like there's also connection and community in nature. It's not just like fighting and competition. There is that, but it's not all of it. And I was just having this moment watching these ants, and I'm like, yep, that's it right there.
Yeah, we should act like ants with each other instead of antagonizing each other.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lisa, you didn't know that Darren has like some pretty incredible word quips that he uses on a regular basis.
I want all the dad jokes and the witty quips.
Yeah, well, there's a lot more where that came from, that's for sure. Yeah.
So many. And I will say that they've become pretty advanced sometimes. I'm like, wow.
Okay, well.
Yeah, that was a fast turnaround for that one.
Yeah. Well, I want everybody to know that one thing that's coming on our earth is we're moving toward non-judgment day.
Oh.
Yeah. Non-judgment day is coming. So better let go of your judgments now.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like those little nuggets. Those
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's right.
So I like to say something about practices, because just to make it practical for people, it's beautiful to talk about consciousness and the possibilities. But what do you do moment to moment? Here you are with yourself. Here it is as a Thursday, and you are doing whatever you're doing. And what can you do to make the difference between it being more like how you, let's say, more conditional? When I say conditioned mind, that's like the way you've been brought up to be by all these different other external things. That's generally somewhat fear-based, even if you're not consciously feeling afraid, there's like some undercurrent of anxiety, or be or that you could be more in your avatar self, being a goddess in your physical everyday life. Like, what could make the difference? And a lot of it is just moment to moment practices.
Mhm.
And I love practices. I've been experimenting with different spiritual practices and meditations and kinds of mindfulness for my whole life. And there's ones I'm working with now. And I shared those at the retreat. And I share these in my courses and so on. And it's also in my book, Awakening the Avatar Within. There's quite a few of these. But they're not necessarily things you have to sit down for an hour to do. They're just ways of awareness. And that is really good to actually sit down and meditate for some period of time. It's one of the greatest pleasures, actually, once you like open up to it. It's just it's lusciousness. It's like bathing in pure lusciousness. But so I'll just share one basic practice that I think is really useful to anyone listening to this. And that is to practice embodiment. That means just realize there's a lot of things that want to pull your attention out, and your energy, literally, if you could see the level of energy, it kind of goes out of your body like little tentacles, and it just goes into like these different media and people that you're working with. It's not necessarily negative. It's just you're out. You could be all over the world with modern media. So to simply say, I now call all of my energy back into my own body is such a powerful practice. Like, if you want to try with me now, just simply, take a deep breath. And then if you want to experience this, just say that out loud is usually helpful. I now call all of my energy back into my own body. And then just notice what that feels like. Notice how much quieter it got here. And then you can sense inside your own body, like you can actually just simply feel like sort of you can call it energy or sensation, but there's a general feeling of life that's in your body when you're alive. And I know for a lot of my life, I was oblivious to it because I was so into my head, but now it's very present to me. And so just simply sensing inside your body is a very powerful spiritual practice, your inner body. And then another one is grounding, is to take a breath and send some of your energy down 2 feet under the surface of the earth. There's a part of you that connects with the earth there. And just put your attention there for a moment, or imagine that there's some way you connect with the earth for a moment. And it kind of takes all this head energy and just sort of balances it more. And then another one is simply, after you've called yourself in your body and you've grounded, to choose love as just a general state of being. Not necessarily I'm loving my daughter, I'm loving my dog, but just choosing love. Like, this is my state of being. It's like, choosing a certain like radio station or something. So how about that? You call yourself in your body, ground, and choose love. And then do whatever you're about to do or say what you're about to say. It's very different. It's a very different place to come from. And you are stepping out of the slave self and the conditioned self every time you do that. And the more you do it, the stronger you get at it. So these things are simple, but they're very, very powerful.
Thank you so much, Darren. I love that we're kind of wrapping up with that tangible practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know you have a lot more that you share in your containers and Bridge to Mastery and your book as well, which I've experienced all of them, or those two specifically. And so I'm so grateful because I use them regularly, and it makes a big difference as a coach and a practitioner in this space, and being with groups and really aligning energy to be able to be there fully for others in the best way possible. So I'm very grateful.
I will say, if anyone is interested in experiencing what Shanna was talking about, there's another retreat that'll be coming up in the summer, and another quite called master course, where people who are, generally I'm working with people who are leaders or healers or coaches or people that are interested, that kind of thing, of helping others who wish to go into that level. there is another one of those coming up. So anyone's welcome to contact me to get that information.
And how can people contact you? We'll put some stuff in the notes, but also just so we speak it out loud, what's the best way for individuals to contact you?
You can do it through my website, which is www.drstarwynn, STARWYNN.com.
Beautiful. Awesome.
Also, my email is darren@drstarwynn.com. So either one of those is okay.
Perfect. I love it. And we've had a few of our lovely network of practitioners on the Elevated Frequency podcast over the past year and a half, maybe. And so again, our goal is really to help our listeners to gain access to new ways, new modalities to continue to elevate their own frequency. Some of them will resonate with you, some of them won't, and that's okay. We just really want to give access to learning about these things, if you don't know about them. And so I'm just really grateful that you joined us today. It was such a pleasure.
Oh, I love being with you too. You're just doing such wonderful work, and I really appreciate having this chance to talk with you and share more. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. I think we can all agree we could probably talk for hours.
Yes.
Right here.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe we'll do a round 2 soon.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'll be good. There definitely is a round 2 there in the offing.
Absolutely. And for those of you who got a chance to watch, thank you so much. And for those of you watching or listening in the future, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you want to hear any more in any different area, if you liked this podcast, let us know. And we look forward to the next one, which will be next week. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Lise, of course. And we'll see you guys all next time. Thanks so much.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.
Be blessed.